I always had a feeling, because like whenever I would go through a breakup, even if I dated somebody for 2 weeks, I'd be on the floor in physical pain. And I just thought, and I hate using the word, but I just thought I was crazy. And I was like, why am I why do other people not go through this? What is wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling this so keenly? And I just didn't have a word for it because, I also didn't know BPD existed. And I saw, the words on the page in black and white of what borderline personality disorder was, and I started crying because I thought, oh my God, my life after 30 years just makes complete sense.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sheri Jacobson, and this is THERAPYLAB, a podcast dedicated to demystifying therapy, mental health, and the art of well-being. In this episode, we are joined by TV producer Adeel Amini to talk about his personal experiences. Hello, Adeel.
Hello.
A warm welcome.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm well. It's been a bit of a crazy few weeks, but I'm in a very good and happy place, which is, something I'm always grateful for saying because it doesn't happen all the time. And it's a wonderful thing to say and actually mean.
And how has it been busy in the past few weeks?
So for people who haven't sort of been keeping tabs on it, there's been a survey by the Film and TV Charity, and they have revealed that I think 87% of film and TV workers have suffered mental health issues compared to 65% of the national average. And 1 in 10 have considered taking their own lives. So these are absolutely shocking figures. And I've been working with the Film and TV Charity. I'm a freelance TV producer, work mainly in entertainment. And I sort of was working with them as a case study to talk to the press about my experiences as a sufferer of BPD, depression, anxiety, and working as a freelancer in the industry. So that kind of all blew up a little bit over the last few weeks, and I work with them. I have my day job, but also I thought it was important to share my story. And just let people know how difficult it is for us because there's no support. And I also run, something on the side as well for freelancers, just like, mental wellness drop-ins and, trying to change, I suppose, the nature of the conversation and the nature of the industry, which is a really big thing to do.
Quite shocking. 87% of 9,000 people surveyed. Let's just, as a representation of that, what was your experience like, and how far do you want to start the story?
So for me, it sort of goes hand in hand, and I'm always with my past anyway, and things outside of TV. So I'm always keen to stress that while my issues weren't caused by TV, they certainly were exacerbated by the nature of the industry. So, I grew up in a Muslim family up in the north of England, and, I came out as gay in my early 20s. So, that was a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of baggage that comes with that anyway. And then, I got into this industry sort of by accident, but I embraced it. I thought this is really fun. It's where I want to be. And I think what happened to me was that I was misdiagnosed for about 10 years. I think, I was just told I had depression and anxiety, and it was only at the age of 30. I'm 34 now, but it was only at the age of 30 that I was told, actually, you have borderline personality disorder. So by that point, I was already going through ups and downs, and, BPD is a condition of extremes and extreme behavior. And the TV industry is an industry of extremes in that, you have a job. And for, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3, it could be 6 months, but for that time, that is your life. You live and breathe that job. You get in at 9, 10 in the morning, and you often don't leave, till 11. There are jobs where I've left at 1 in the morning and be back in at 7. When you do studio filming, the days start at 8, and then, again, you're there till 11, and you do that 5 or 6 days in a row. And then, you have a social life, you have structure, you have a job, you have all the things that come with it, minus the benefits of the corporate structure because you're freelance, so you're not entitled to them, or companies don't want to give you them because it costs them more money. And then just like that, you're let go, you're gone. You are waking up and you're like, oh no, this is, everything's changed, and I don't have something to get up for in the mornings. And I'm now looking at my phone, really anxious, thinking, where's my next job coming from, and who's going to employ me? And I can't go on holiday because what if I get a call and I can't do the job? Or, and then you're just constantly on this, uneven platform, and that obviously affects your mental health, even without BPD. And, so many people who've been in touch with me since the interviews have said, it is a really, really difficult thing. And, your self-worth plummets. You feel so isolated and alone. You can't share anything on social media or talk about it because you're worried that people won't employ you. You're going to be a liability. Oh, that person's got mental health issues, and we're not. Are they a flight risk? Is this? And so you have that, and I think that's it goes beyond the TV industry as well. I think everyone has difficulty talking about mental health, particularly online. But I think it's for a freelancer it's even harder because of those things. So it becomes really, really difficult even without BPD. But for me it was quite possibly one of the worst times of my life. Certainly the lead up to my what I call my breakdown, which is there's this moment at the age of 30 where I had no job, my money situation had changed. I'd worked for in this industry for 8 years and felt like I didn't have anything to show for it. I was sleeping on a floor because I couldn't afford to pay my rent, again because of this change of financial circumstances. I was in an abusive relationship, and I became heavily dependent on drugs. And substance abuse was, my last act of rebellion. And, I'd never touched any alcohol or drugs all my life. So, that one was like a huge thing for, it was just me trying to get out of the situation that I was in without physically having to do it myself. And it was a cry for help, for sure. But, again, a lot of that stuff you can't attribute to the film and TV industry. But some of it was made a lot worse, and the environment and the inability to talk about things. So a lot of what I do now as well is based around encouraging people to talk. We'll talk. I'm sure we'll talk about my recovery, in a bit. But certainly on the other side of it, what I would like to do, and the reason that I do what I do, is that I don't want anyone to have to go through what I did.
Take us back to the earliest time and what were the signs? What was going on for you that sort of alerted you to the difficulties, psychological difficulties?
To the difficulties in the...
sort of like you said, you misdiagnosed for about 10 years.
Yeah.
The start of when you started to feel not great, what did that look like for you, and how did that progress?
I think for me, it was always constant through my 20s. I think my trigger was mainly relationships. And I think, BPD is different for everyone, who suffers it. But for me in particular, my trigger was relationships and that sense of abandonment and seeking approval from other people. And certainly in my choice of partners, I perhaps wasn't, the wisest. But I was looking for something, and I was looking for external validation because I didn't have it for myself. So I always had a feeling, because whenever I would go through a breakup, even if I dated somebody for 2 weeks, I'd be on the floor in physical pain. And I just thought, and I hate using the word, but I just thought I was crazy. And I was like, why am I why do other people not go through this? What is wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling this so keenly? And I just didn't have a word for it because, I also didn't know BPD existed. I had no clue that this was something, it's not something that's talked about. And again, personality disorders aren't really the go-to when you, when you are being diagnosed. So I went through a couple of, courses of therapy. And they helped, but they were definitely what I like to call, a plaster when surgery was needed. And so those were the initial signs. But I think really, 2015 was when that was when it just all started snowballing. Like I say, just reacting and acting out in certain ways, and just constantly waking up with this feeling of like, I don't want to be here. the pain just being so unbearable that, you know, I thought that not being around would be, you know, easier than just having to live this way. My moods were up and down, and funny enough, it was my partner at the time who saw one of my extreme mood changes. He's like, "Oh my God, you just like, you know, flipped out at me and you got really angry. And then the next moment you were just calm as if nothing had happened." So he sent me this link and he said, "I think you might have this." And I was going through a course of CBT at the time because again, they thought that might be the right thing for me. That was through the NHS. It turns out it wasn't the right thing. And, you know, CBT wasn't a great experience for me personally. And I saw, you know, the words on the page in black and white of what borderline personality disorder was, and I started crying because I thought, oh my God, my life after 30 years just makes complete sense. And all of these things that I thought had made me crazy, they have a name. It's a thing. I'm not, and it just blew my mind. And even to this day, like, you know, you just sort of think, you know, do I really have it or whatever? And then you look at you're like, I was like, yeah, no, that still exists within me. And, you know, it's about the management of it all now. But yeah, that was, you know, it was towards the end of 2015 and all these extreme behaviors, you know, I think I read somewhere that if you sort of tick a certain number of criteria, you have BPD, and I was engaging in a lot of that stuff. So, you know, there's, you know, the suicidal thoughts, the reckless spending, mood swings, and anger issues, reckless sexual behavior, drug abuse, you know, I was ticking a lot of those boxes. So yeah, it was a huge wake-up call. But yeah, that was certainly, you know, it started in a different way in my head. And, you know, I think a lot of those issues obviously trace back to my own issues of identity. But they certainly came to a head with all of this.
And is that work that you've done on your own? Or is it, like, how did you know that you had BPD? Was it self-recognized, or did you see a professional who did the assessment on you?
It was both. So during the course of CBT, I brought it up with my therapist. And I said, look, I think I have this. And again, you know, as they need to do, they're like, well, let's not jump to conclusions. Let's like, you know, and we worked it out, but then I was assessed and it was diagnosed.
With this, wouldn't it have been the same practitioner? Would it a psychiatrist?
Yeah, it was. So she referred me to a psychiatrist. She was like, if we need to, if, you know, you're on this course of CBT, and obviously with the NHS, you know, there was a danger of just being trapped in the system. And I was like, almost wanting to shake someone and be like, I need help now, like right now. But yeah, I was referred, and then basically a couple of incidents happened where I left the therapy. So I left London. I needed to get away. Like it was a case of, if I don't leave right now, I am going to die. Like that's how bad my situation was. And I just, you know, I called my parents, and you know they took me back up to Yorkshire, no questions asked, and it was you know, at that point I just started to just shut everything down. Like, you know, I thought I was never going to come back to TV. I thought the TV industry wasn't right for me, and I didn't want to be part of it. I didn't know if I was ever going to come back to London, because I feel like this, you know, city had chewed me up and spat me back out. I ended my relationship because not because I realised it was unhealthy. I just thought I can't go back to it. And again, I just wanted to cut everything off and just disappear. And then about 2 or 3 weeks into that, again, just sort of, you know, just sort of waking up at certain odd times and not really feeling anything or doing anything, and just you know, being in a lot of pain. I think I was always grateful for people at home, you know, not asking any questions, but always just having a hot meal on the table, and those kind of things, and those structures, and that sort of recovery, you know, sometimes it doesn't have a name or anything. It's just a thing. It's an act, but those all build up and they help you. But about 3 weeks into it, I decided that I would do the one thing that I know that I'm good at, no matter what comes and goes. You know, there's some things that I cling on to that I'm like, look, you know, I've had a lot of people say horrible things about me, and you know, the way that I am and who are my, you know, again, my identity didn't fit in with any demographic that either I grew up in or then worked in. And I'm used to that, and that's absolutely fine. But I knew that, there are some things that can't be changed, and one of those is that I think I'm a good writer. I know how to, I enjoy my writing, and I enjoy doing it. And I thought, I don't have anything to lose now at this point. Like, everything, I've lost everything, that I had and everything that I built. So I'm going to tell people, and I'm going to write about it. And I just wrote this really long blog post in 2016, in April 2016. And I just posted it online. And, it was like, it was called On the Borderline. And, it was just this huge thing of what had been happening to me and what was going on. And I hit send, and oh my God, like the response after that was incredible. Like, I had so many messages and so many people reaching out, because I obviously mentioned the TV thing as well at that point. And so many people just reaching out and saying, we felt the same, or, I can't believe you've been through all of that. And even my family, it was the first time they'd really known what was going on, and they all reached out and they were like, we had no idea. And that feeling was just like, I also got a bit angry, I think, after it. Because I thought, I should have been able to do this a long time ago. And we are all so boxed in, and so, we're so worried about what people would think. And I just thought, my God, this is so helpful. This is so, so good. And so, enriching. Obviously, it was still a long way to recovery. But for that moment, I thought, oh my God, people understand. And I should have done this a long time ago. And I should have been able to put my hand up and say, I'm in trouble. So that was a huge, huge turning point. So to go back and answer your question, I do take out 6 different tangents and I answer a question. But it was partly through therapy, and then partly through yourself, but also through just a change of practices and the people around me. And there's a lot of things contribute to recovery for sure.
And where did it go from that blog post?
I started writing more. I felt more okay with what I had, and now that I'd put it out there, I felt less ashamed. I felt happier. I felt like, acknowledging the problem in public was a start, or even privately was a start, but certainly putting it out there is like, right, okay, it's out there. I started writing a bit more. And I keep saying this to a few friends who are going through similar at the moment, but, recovery isn't linear. And it certainly isn't one of those things that you wake up one day and you think, oh, I'm better now. It's one of those things that just sort of happens piecemeal. It'll be 4:00 on a Wednesday, and you'll just be like, oh, I don't have that feeling of despair about the future and anxiety. You're like, oh, that's interesting, and because you're engrossed in other things. And then there, the thing that again I learned in the aftermath was that it's not just like that. After you'll have a dip, you'll go up, you will relapse for some people, and recovery is going to be up and down, and you can't punish yourself for that, which I did to begin with, because the exacting high standards on myself. So that was another learning experience, and I also I had to decide what I wanted to do in the future. Did I want to sit at home and give up my career and just live a life up there that I wasn't really sure about? And I thought, no, I want to go back. I want to try one more time. Now that I know what I know, I want to try it. And if it's not okay, I'll go back to London. I'll try this job that I've been offered, which is a job I'd done before with people that I knew. So I was like, okay, look, it's a comfortable environment. And I thought, I owe it to myself, but also I got a little bit angry. Like, why should I have to give up the things that I love for something that I didn't choose? Now that I'm managing it and I know what it is, then I feel like I have as much right to be there as anyone else. And, if there's one thing I've always done in my life is fight, whether, it's fight for identity or the things. I've always been, someone who's just had to fight for everything, and probably to the point of, being stubborn and maybe slightly aggressive about it sometimes. But, I've got a sense of like wanting to combat injustice, and that felt like an injustice. It's like, no, I'm going to try it and I'm going to go back. So God knows where I got that fighting spirit from. Somehow seems to still be in there, clearly, with all these campaigns I'm taking on. But yeah, that you know, so that all kind of snowballed, and I came back to London, which was really scary.
And
so when I got back, it was, yeah, things started to sort of shine again. And you know, it was funny. I was reading a piece that I'd written this morning, and I was like, you know, you sort of, it's like feeling sunshine on your skin after a really long time, and you don't see what's around it, but you just want to enjoy that sensation because you haven't felt it for so long. And you're laughing and you're smiling, but you mean it from within, like, you know, that it's so, there's no explanation. I don't know how to, you know, sort of put that feeling across in that, apart from saying that it is magical. But you know, again, that recovery was piecemeal for me, and you know, it was very slow, but it did exist, and I just really clung on to those things. The other thing that happened was that, you know, I realised at the age of 30 that I had lived my life entirely beholden to other people. So ever since I was born, I had basically always had something or someone telling me what I can and can't do, or what I can and can't be. You know, whether it's family, religion, community, you know, school, work, friends, boyfriends, you know, all of that. You know, I've always had someone saying, you can't be this, you can't do that, you can't, you know, a lot of can'ts. And I thought to myself, no, I am 30. Do you know what? I want to make decisions for myself. I want to take my life, you know, I just want to take control of it, because I never have. And I made, you know, there was some decisions that were just really frivolous, but they felt like mine. Like, I bleached my hair. And I was like, screw it. Like, you know, I want to do this. Like, it makes me happy. And it did make me happy. And it was a form of control. I started, you know, doing a lot of healthier, like, you know, well, I had healthier practices in life, you know, saying no to things, not going around situations that make me feel uncomfortable, realizing that, you know what, my life is very, you know, life is fleeting and precious. I almost lost mine. So, you know, I'm not going to waste my time doing stuff that I don't want to do for the sake of politeness, or, you know, I'm going to just do whatever the hell I want, and that will be fine. So, yeah, that was a huge help as well, just sort of realizing that, you know, this is now my life, and I've done it everyone else's way. Now I'm going to do it my way. And I always say to people that my life really started at 30. You know, this is, you know, it's just this magical new chapter. I'm seeing everything clearly. And yeah, I think, you know, being the way that I am, and certainly talking about it, is my way of saying, you know what, I owe it to myself and the people around me, you know, to use this second chance that I've been given and make something of it. And also I just want people to know that, you know, whether it's in TV or not, that you can be in the absolute pit the way that I was, but there is another side. And I'm living proof of it.
And what a journey it's been for you.
Yeah.
I mean, two things obviously very, very prominent. One is authenticity and self-discovery, and learning more about yourself and expressing yourself in the ways that you want. The other also is kind of boundaries and saying no. What are any other well-being tools, things that keep you well and help you manage BPD?
I think one of the things, well, managing BPD is so tricky, because even in the aftermath, I took a lot of time to negotiate my triggers and work out what they were. So I was single and celibate for about 2 years after that, because I thought, okay, this is clearly something that's not good for me. So let me just take some time to retune myself. I think, again, it's that self-validation, is just knowing that you are enough, and that you're, you know, you don't need anything else, whether it's a job or a boyfriend or anything like that. You don't need any of those things to, you know, have self-actualization. And that you and in yourself, so long as, you know, I wake up in the morning and I'm able to look at myself in the mirror and be proud of who I am, you know, that is the best start I can give my day. I think also, you know, listening to, I always think, we have, we have personal trainers in the gym and stuff, and people who sort of say, you're right, you have X amount of calories and you've got to do these exercises or whatever. But I always think, we need one for the mind as well.
Great.
It's so important. And I think, what you've got to do, and one thing I've learned, I'm still learning actually, this year, is to trust your gut. And, the way that you would listen to your body, you have to listen to your mind. And I think a lot of us either just stifle it or suffocate it for the sake of either, again, being polite or not wanting to offend people. And I think, no, if you're, just listen to that voice, listen to what your mind and your body are saying, take time off, take a Sunday to yourself. And that's another thing that I do, is I try not to book things on a Sunday because that's my day. I give so much of myself to other people that I need a day for myself where I just want to read or watch a film or, just do the things that I want to do. And I think, there's two other things that I would say, I've learned, and that is that, particularly in the UK, we're taught that being modest is, the thing to do. You don't shout about your achievements, and also that, being selfish is bad. And in some situations that is true, but I think those are the two biggest lies I've ever been told. I think, it is important to recognize your achievements. Like, by the age of 30, when I had my breakdown, if I look back at my life, I'd interviewed the world's biggest author, I'd been a stand-up comedian, I'd worked on the biggest shows on the planet, I'd won awards. And I looked back, but at that age, and that I still thought I was a failure. And when I looked on the other side, when I was recovering, I looked at it and I was like, actually, Adeel, objectively, you have done more at the age of 30 than any people do their whole lives. And why are you still pushing yourself? Yeah. So there was that side. I thought, appreciating your own achievements is really important. And saying that someone could come along and say X, Y, Z about me, and I'd be like, what, that's your opinion, but I know, and I'm sure of myself, and whatever you say isn't going to change that. The other thing is being selfish. I think it's a wonderful thing sometimes. It's such a, it's been, it's used as a negative word, but I think being selfish is one of the biggest kindness, acts of kindness you can do for yourself. And just taking things for yourself, like obviously without trampling on other people or, upsetting anyone. But if you don't want to go out one night, you want to cancel your plans, you want to just do your own thing, just do it.
An act of self-care.
Absolutely. Like, it is. So I think, those are two lies I feel like I've been told. And I certainly would say, like, I don't, again, being a bit selfish, not being perhaps this. Because the thing is with modesty is it becomes faux modesty. It's sort of, you say these things over and over again that you start believing them. Oh, it's nothing. Oh, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not that special. And then you say these things out loud and they become, you either start believing them or, they just become ingrained in your mind because that's what you've always said and you've always done. And I think that really damages your self-esteem and your self-worth. So I think it's important to say, this stuff, that the campaigning that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, I've had so many wonderful messages, and I've saved them because I thought, you know what, if ever I'm struggling, I just need to look at them and remind myself that what I'm doing is good and I am a good person and that, these things are making a difference. And, I think that's important rather than just saying, oh, that's, it's nothing, it's just acknowledging the facts of a situation.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Therapy Lab. If you feel ready to transform your life with therapy, we're offering 10% off a first session with any therapist on harleytherapy.com to our listeners. Just use the code TherapyLab when you book your session on harleytherapy.com. So you have a lot of self-care tools and practices that I assume that you've developed a lot of them on your own. Have you had external assistance, whether it's in the form of self-help books? And I'm going to stick in that as well, the question about why CBT didn't work for you.
Sure. So CBT didn't work for me particularly because of the BPD. And when my emotions were triggered, it's like a bullet train. And, you have a thought, and your synapse, it just sort of immediately goes to that response. And it was an extreme response, whether it was anger or hurt or, whatever it was. And my therapist at the time wanted me to just stop in those moments and write things down. And I just thought, are you, when those things happen, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can barely think. Like, there's a red mist over me, and there's all sorts of things exploding in my brain. And you want me to stop and write things down? Like, all I want to do is just like get this pen and paper and throw it out the window. It really it frustrated me. I was like, this isn't work. It's too practical. I need, and it would work for some people. And I don't, I have friends who've used it to overcome things like OCD and anxiety. And I think, fair play, those things, it can work for that. But for me in particular, I needed talk therapy for sure. Yeah. So I left that. And then it was only when I had like my first little dip a year later, again, I was saying that recovery isn't linear. So, I then reached out to a different kind of therapist. It was through an app, and I had a bit of money that I could, I looked at certain options, but even for a consultation, I was like, I can't justify this. But my friend recommended an app to me, and I found a therapist through there. I was matched with somebody who's based in Chicago, and it was good because I could do it based around work. And this is, I'm sure when we talk more about TV and film, it was hard as a freelancer to say, oh, I need to go take an hour to go to Wembley to have therapy in the middle of this production. Yeah. And I need to do this every week. Like, it's a big ask. It's a really tough thing to be able to do. So I thought, okay, I can fit this around my work hours. She's 5 hours behind, and, I can do it after work, and it's an hour, and it's a video call, and I feel like, I'm in my own space and I can talk. And that has changed my life. I'm such a huge advocate of therapy, and particularly, any type of therapy that works for you, is great. But therapy in general, I always say to people, even if you think you don't need it, you should still go. It gives you a chance to like know yourself so well. But the trick is, and I'm sure obviously your listeners and everyone who comes is aware of this, is that you have to be honest. The only way it's going to work is transparency. So with, my therapist at the moment, so we had a course of 4 weeks. We did an hour a week, and she, by the end of it, was like, you know what, I think you're doing all right. Which for me was music to my ears, because I was like, okay, so what I've learned is that BPD is never going to leave me, but the way I manage it is going to change. And those periods where I relapsed, the time to recover is going to become a little bit shorter. It's going to get shorter and shorter to the point that I'll find a way of managing it and getting myself out of those zones. Yeah. But the other thing that she did was she said to me, like, okay, I'll take you off the books for now, but here's my number and my email address. Whenever you feel like you need somebody to talk to, you just drop me an email and we'll set up a session, and I'll just charge you for that session. And that's that. And I'm like, this is incredible, because, I felt like I had a comfort blanket, a safety blanket in my pocket at all times. If ever I felt my symptoms or, anything was being triggered, I could just get my phone out and say, look, I really need a session. And, sometimes she would sort that out within 24 hours. And I never had that before. I felt like I was walking, but someone was holding my hand all the way through, and I felt, and the key is I didn't feel alone. And, that is such a, for somebody with who has that fear of abandonment, just and thinking I didn't have anything, to then suddenly have a professional. And I think that was key for me as well, because people are like, can you talk to us about it? Oh, we don't really get BPD, and like, what is it exactly? And I get a lot of that, and I'm like, I can't be bothered explaining. But, to have, for me, just to have a professional, someone who gets it there, somebody I can turn to, makes me live my life really like in such a lovely way, and just, I have that strength and confidence because I know that I'll be able to get through anything that happens. Yeah.
Wonderful resource.
Yeah.
Not all therapists do that, by the way.
No, I know. I got really lucky.
Ad hoc versus ongoing.
Yeah, so, I got really, really lucky. Yeah. And I think we just clicked. She's been instrumental in my recovery, and it's been a really magical experience.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
So how do you envisage carrying on in the TV and film industry? knowing the pressures and that it entails.
Yeah. So I think this experience has taught me that, working in TV and film, as much as I enjoy it, it's maybe not my be all and end all. I love what I do. I'm so lucky that I never get that Monday morning feeling. I get to have a lot of fun at work. I, feel like I'm being pushed creatively, and I'm using, my talents well. But I'm not saving lives, and I think this whole experience has taught me that I want to use what I've been through to help other people. So I have, I have this sort of, I think, what is the point of going through that if you can't use it, for the benefit of others? I'm not just going to keep it to myself and not share my story and be like, oh, no, this is mine. I just worked this out for myself, and I don't want to share it with anyone. I kind of think, well, no, if you've got a, potential remedy for something, of course you want to share it with other people so that they don't go through the same thing. And I've got nephews and nieces as well, and I think, I don't want them to grow up in the world that I did. Like, there's only, and I've said to people so many times, I've told my story on camera, on the news, and all of, and people are like, are you sure you want to do this? Is this fine? Is it too much? And I said, look, if me telling my story, if it reaches one person who's going through, just one person who says they need that, then I'll tell my story 100 times. Like, there's no question. And I always, you'll have to forgive me this really laboured metaphor that I have, but it's how I see things at the moment, is that, I feel like, when life at the moment is like a bus journey, and we get given our seat and we can, make it as fancy and as lovely and as comfortable as possible. And, we can, really, adorn it with all these wonderful things. And, we can choose to like rigidly and very stubbornly grab onto that seat and die in it. And what's left for the next person who sits along, there's just a decrepit corpse, and you can't sit in that seat anymore. But for me, it's now a case of, right, I'm going to make this seat wonderful and comfortable and happy. But the key is, for all of us, I think, is to get up at the right time so that somebody else can take it. And I've left it in such a wonderful place that they can enjoy. They don't have to go through the things that I did, but they can just enjoy what I've left, because I think it's silly to think that, any of us are going to be here forever. So what are we leaving behind? And so for the TV and film industry, that's exactly my ethos. What am I leaving behind for this generation of runners and researchers, people who are starting out? I have privilege, it's a word that's bandied around a lot, and I've, attacked people for their privilege, whether it's with race or gender or, whatever that is. But for me, I think I do have now what I call mental health privilege. I'm lucky to have, to be on top of things on the other side, and to be able to tell my story. So it's, and I'm also in a part, I've now been in TV 11 years, and I know I'll get jobs. I don't worry about that side. So I am in a privileged position. So what am I using that privilege for? That is my, I can turn it inward. But it's not about me, it's about this industry, and I love this industry. It's given me a lot, so I want to do something for the industry as a whole, and the only way I know how to do that is to try and make things better for the next generation.
Which is such a generous spirit. Any parting words of inspiration to people if they are feeling at a difficult spot?
I would say, listen to your mind and body for sure. Like, if you are feeling a certain way, it's for a reason. Don't let, your work or your family or your partner or any aspect of society tell you that what you're feeling is invalid, and you owe it to yourself to interrogate it and explore it. Take the time for yourself, take a mental health day, take a holiday, do the thing that you need to do, find the thing that makes you happy. For me, it was writing. But, I need to listen to this advice myself, because last year, I worked way too much. I did 18 months. I kept on saying yes to jobs because I was worried about, what if I don't get another one and another one? But across 18 months, I only took 3 separate weeks off. So I relapsed really badly last year. Not like in terms of the physical side, but certainly like, mental exhaustion and the thoughts that came back. So it's a really important, I need to listen to that advice myself. And certainly, it's very, very fresh in my mind, but, listen to your gut, do the thing, if you're feeling in a difficult position, reach out to people. Easier said than done, I know, but there are ways that that you can do it where you feel comfortable. Therapy. If you we all have bad days. There are bad, and it's impossible to avoid those. So don't punish yourself for having them. But if you feel like your bad day is stretching to a bad month or a bad 6 months, then again, therapy is not a dirty word. It's something that has changed my life, and it could be the right thing for you as well. It may not be that you get the right therapist straight away, or, you might have to do a bit of trial and error, but, so long as you're willing to, give yourself to the process, it is absolutely, it's just a godsend.
What a great way to end.
Yeah.
That is great. Waving the flag for therapy.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, Adeel, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
And all the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Therapy Lab. To find private, affordable therapy in person around the UK or online by video from around the world, visit harleytherapy.com today to start therapy as soon as tomorrow. If this is your first listen to Therapy Lab, do hit subscribe to keep up to date with new episodes. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, and all good platforms.